it's time to tackle the brakes. So this is something we knew when we bought the car, needed brakes. So I've ordered some new DBA 4000 series rotors, had them on many of our cars, great track rotor, and a new set of pads, some Ferodo DS2500 pads. So we'll start by taking off the caliper. So first thing, just want to make sure that these can move. If they don't, put some penetrating oil on them and let them soak for a little while. These ones not too bad because we don't really get any rust here. Now we'll start by removing the pads, and that is by taking out this little cotter pin here and knocking that through. So just using an old screwdriver and a hammer, and we'll just tap that through. Pull out the pin. Don't lose that. So the pin's in okay condition. It's got a little bit of surface marring. So what we're going to do, we're going to go over that with just some emery paper, some like fine wet dry, and just clean that off, just so it's a smoother finish. But said if yours are really corroded, you want to get those replaced. Cheap to get. And then we got our pad retaining clip here, and on that there's the brake wear, pad sensor wear line. So we're going to pop that off as well. There we go, the line is free. And that clip just comes straight out. So it's a Brembo, same as our Evos. And we'll get some needle nose and pull straight up on that sensor wire, and then it's off. Now we will be trying to reuse these, so I'll try not to break them. There we go, that's out of there. It's just held in with that little groove. It was just pushed in there, so pull that out. So that's aside. Now we can pry the pistons back and get these pads out. Worth mentioning when you're doing this, okay, so recently we've done the brake fluid, so I don't want to lose any of it, but we're going to have to remove a bit because when we push the pistons back in the caliper, it's going to displace it. So I have a dry water bottle, is key to have it dry, and a little syringe, and I'm going to suck some of the fluid out and put it into here. That way we've got lots of room, so we're not going to overflow. We don't want to overflow brake fluid all through the frunk. It's wouldn't be a happy place to be in if you do that. There, I took out quite a bit there. Or I'd rather take out too much than not enough, so we can always put it back in. Okay, I do have a pad spreader. I don't know if I can get it in here, but we can used to do it with the Evo all the time with a screwdriver. You just don't want to mark up the paint, so I mean you can use channel grip pliers. I've seen guys do that and squeeze it, but you got to put a rag here, so you can do that with those pliers as well. But really just some leverage, and they'll move back just enough to get them out. Doesn't need much. You can feel it moving there. A little bit more. It's gonna creak. So I think we got happening is that there's pad dampeners on the back, which are kind of glued on, and they are not letting us take it out. It's got to go a little bit further back. basically they got to be all the way back. If you pull off the pad dampeners, which some guys do, we'll just reuse these anyway. And the pads will just, at this point, the pads will just pull straight out. So what I've just done there, I've just gone between the pad dampener and the pad and popped it off where it was glued on. That was an easy way to do it. Okay, and then you can see the pad dampeners are inside. And I don't think the new pads have them. So we can just leave those in there because they will stick back onto the new pad. If our new pads have them, we'll just slide them out. There we go, do the same for that one. Done. So I was a little bit of, they're probably about 1/2 to 3/4 done, but have to get out of there anyway because these rotors definitely are done. Okay, next up, we got to remove the brake line, and that is held on by that 10 mil nut. So we'll just get in there and rip that out. That's a quick one. And then we've got the brake line is going to be free. See, there's a nice shiny braided brake lines. And then we can get the caliper off. There we go. It's got a little washer, so don't lose the washer. Put that with your pin, and then bracket is off. Time for the caliper. So the caliper is held on by one, and there's 2 big hex bolts. So that's a 10 mil. You're not going to do this with an Allen key. You're going to have to get a socket. So this is awesome. If you can get one of these, you'll use this a lot. It's got Torx, hex, 2 size couplers for a 1/2 inch and 3/8, so you got all sorts of stuff. That we're going to put on our breaker bar just to get things started. If you don't have a breaker bar or a torque wrench or just a pipe on a ratchet, and then we're going to break this loose. There it goes. And while we're together here, we'll put this in this lower. And that's loose. Okay, so we'll get the ratchet on here and pull that off. Now, quickly, cable ties. Before we take the caliper off and are fumbling around with it one-handed, good thing I remembered, we'll get the caliper ready to go. We can actually probably just feed this through here now that the pads are out. So it is really ready to hang. Okay, one-handed cable tying. There we go. So it's just loose. We'll tighten it up so it doesn't hang too far. And get this off. Yet. There we go, caliper bolt off. If your bolts are really corroded, you want to think about replacing them or just cleaning them up if possible. Get the top bolt out. Okay, at this point, your caliper is free and clear, so we will just snug the cable ties up so it's not hanging too low here. There we go. Now, I'm gonna have a quick look over and just inspect the We don't have a lot of Ks and hasn't seen a lot of track use this car, so I just have a quick look over and inspect the seals, but everything looks okay in here. So these are the dampening pads. You can see what we pried off. So we might just pop those out. But this has only been a road car, so hasn't had any real track abuse or anything. Okay, that looks good. Rotor time. Now, we did those, only thing holding the rotor on, well, there's probably a bit of corrosion in these two screws, but we'll keep these because they're not stripped. We'll keep those aside because we're gonna have to reuse them. And I can see the caliper, the rotor moving, so when this comes off, it's gonna fall. So we better do something about that. All right. If your rotor's stuck on, you might have to give it a few taps with a mallet, but there we go. Rotor is off. So these have been on here for a while. I don't think we can see any markings or anything, but time to, well, let's weigh this and see what that one weighs compared to the new one. It's gonna be similar because I'm not using a two-piece rotor or anything, but we will give this a little touch up with the wire brush just to get it so it's gonna sit nice and flush on the surface there. So we'll just give that a little tidy up. Wire brush, safety glasses on, and just give it a little once over. Just you want it to smooth the finishes. So it's gonna, the new rotor is gonna sit nice and flush. You don't want to sit it up if it's on a little bit of corrosion or debris or something there. That looks pretty good. Here's the weights for those interested. Okay, turn on scale. There we go, scale on. Stock rotor, 8.8 kilograms. Combine that with these brake pads that have these kind of weights on the top. That is 9.8 kilograms for your stockish pads, and I don't know if these won't be stock, and rotors. So let's try the new ones. Okay, here are the DBAs. That's one DBA, 8.8. And if we check in the pads, which don't have all the weights on them, pick this up to start it. .8. That's not right. That's more like it. 9.8. Total weight savings, 0. But we do have a much more motorsport friendly rotor and pad going in here. So the Rotors DS2500. Now, before we put them in, of course, got to get the brake cleaner on them so they clean up the surfaces. So we'll just get some brake cleaner, paper towel, and give it a wipe. Don't want any funny grease marks on there, not allowing the pad to bed in properly. Look, there's all some gunk. Pretty cool with these rotors. They do have heat temperature paint, so when it hits, they are that's thermal paint, and when it hits a certain temperature, that paint will go white, and you'll be able to determine your temperature of your brakes, whether you're cooking your brakes or not. Okay, time to reinstall the rotor. Try not to touch the face that we just spent the time cleaning, and we slide it on and line up our little screw holes. lined up. We need the other one. Where are they? One there and one there. Easiest thing to juggle around. It's easier on the all-wheel drive car. Because the thing doesn't move. Okay, there we go. There are the two holes lined up. Okay, not getting that all the way tight, just a few turns in. That way we can get this one on, and then we can, once it's both in, then we can center them and tighten them down. Not particularly tight, these screws. They were only in there just kind of hand tight with a screwdriver, and that's all you need. Again, you can put a little anti-seize on there if you want, but depends on your area and how much corrosion you get. Here we go. DBA 4000s on the Porsche. Pad time. Now, because we're going to a more race spec pad, these do not have the hole for the brake wear pad sensor. Easy fix. So what you do is around here, there we go. Okay. Brake wear pad sensor comes around the back and goes onto here. This is a little clip, is pried up with a screwdriver, and pull that out. That's the brake wear sensor. The other line is your ABS sensor. Don't touch that. That's going to be an expensive day. Okay, now it's a closed loop system. It's just a nice and easy to do. You can pull this back, and we're going to give it a little trim. So let's get the wire cutters and do a twist tape and twist and tape on this job. Now, you can always, these are cheap. These are, people always break these anyway when they're taking their pads off, so they're a kind of a replaceable item. So if you feel that you want brake pads with sensors in them, you can always get those for your next set. But for this, we're done with those, so we're just going to cut. These are not the best wire cutters, as you can see. I should probably cut them with something else. Come on. Well, need to invest in some new wire cutters. Okay, got some decent cutters. All we need to do is get these two wires. We'll kind of push them together and twist together. And try to twist my glove into it, but there we go. That just defeated the brake pad sensor. So we got some electrical tape. You can use put a little connector cap over it. I just don't have one, and our car doesn't really see any rough weather or rain anyway. We'll just tape it up and then plop it back in the car. There, it's not pretty, but it's on there and it's quite sealed up. So that we will now put back into its little spot here. Sorry, it got the sun outside is giving it a bit of glare, but so that just goes back up in the side there. And then we push that back down. There we go. Our pad wear sensor has been defeated. We'll reattach the caliper and then slide the pads in. Now I'm going to use those little things that go in the pistons. Why? I don't know. I should just kind of gives a bit of heat protection, I suppose. I've always taken them off, but on other cars, but I'll just run them on this. If I don't like them, it's easy enough to take them off. So we'll cut the cable tie with our not so sharp pliers. There we go. And get one of the top bolt in, just finger tight. Okay, we'll start the bottom. And while we're here, we'll reinstall the brake line mount. Might as well get that done instead of forgetting it later and wondering what that rattling noise is. Okay. Now we'll switch over to the big ratchet and tighten up our caliper. Before we get the torque wrench out, we'll just get these snug. Now, with the torque wrench at 85 Newton meters, or when I looked up, that's 68 pounds-foot. We crank these bolts now, so that if you have crusty-looking bolts, just replace them. They're only a couple bucks each. There we go. And they are properly torqued to spec. So pad's ready. Some guys put like a high temp copper grease and stuff on the back, but for what we're going to be doing on the track, I've always found that kind of just gets really hot, and we don't want too many things in there. So we did keep those shims in. So we just slide the pads in. So we just went over it with a bit of 1000 grit. Look at the orientation. Obviously the cotter pin hole goes at the back, and we need to push this down, get it started, and then we can tap it in with a hammer. Going to have to turn it to get the cotter pin holes lined up because it just spun. There we go. Okay. Put the pin back in. And we now have, that's it, brakes are done on our Porsche. So we've got to pump the pedal a bit just to get them to seat, but that's job done. Now, if you haven't bred your fluid lately, that's the time to do it once these are all done, but we already have. So that is front corner done. Now to the other side, and then we'll tackle the rears.
Several song-filled hours later.
Okay, got the other side done. So realistically, if you have all your tools laid out, after you've done the first side and you figured out what's got to be done, the second side took me under 40 minutes. It took me 37 minutes. I thought, oh, hell, I'll time it just to see how we go. 37 minutes to get the pads in, rotors on, the little brake pad delete thing snipped and taped up, and the sensor delete, and easy. I mean, it's not a hard job to do. All you need really is a torque wrench, and the probably thing you won't have will be that 10 millimeter Allen end, but you can pick up one of those and it'll save you a few $100 on labor. But yeah, very easy to do yourself. All up to do, once you get the wheels off, to do both sides, give yourself an hour, hour and a half, and you should be able to get it done if nothing's all seized up.